When speaking of knowing your why for your pilot, it's also important to set specific goals, right? Set specific goals for you as a company, but also make sure that your definition of success syncs with what the customer thinks is success. This is going to require some preliminary groundwork by you as the company to identify how do customers define success for your product. Once we have those goals set and we know what we're looking for, the next step for us is often to collect informed consent and assent, and if required, complete an institutional review board application and get our permissions in place, especially when we're dealing with student data. Now, even if you have a researcher on your team handling your pilot implementation and data collection, you really want to ascertain that you have a couple of your ducks in a row before you go to that step. For example, if your company already has, let's say, a customer chat bot or a phone option or an email option, you want to ensure that these are actually available and are going to provide useful information. What are the ways that a user who's experiencing a problem can contact you and let you know this isn't working, or how do I do this? Make sure that information is available, useful, and shared with the potential user base. A second thing is, let's say you don't have that set up yet because you're just testing your basic product. In that instance, feel welcome to open up a channel for communication, even if it is only for the duration of the pilot. One of the goals of your pilot is to collect data. You want to be able to allow users to interact with you. It can be stressful, but it's all valuable data on what's working, what's not, what are your frequently asked questions. Another piece is to think through your onboarding process. Even if you have a researcher on board working with the usability and feasibility aspects, they are most likely going to help you understand what is working, what is not. But even before they get to that stage, your product must be ready for use. This is easier if you're just working, let's say, with a teacher, and all they need is a login and a password. On the other hand, if now they need to invite students onto your platform to use your product, you need to ensure that you have the logistical pieces in place. How are the students going to log on? Is there going to be a QR code? Is there a group bulk sign-on option for the students? How can you make the teacher's job of using your product easier? This is something that you must have some baseline for which researchers can then collect data and let you know if that's good enough, too much, too little, whatever the case might be. But you need to make sure that there is onboarding documentation. Also remember that if you are working with a special population, whether they are children or another sensitive population, you need to make sure that you're having some sort of a document or presentation or some sort of information to allow their caregivers to ascertain if they even want their student or person to engage with your product. This might require you to kind of showcase what's the goal of the pilot. What kind of data are you going to be using? How is that data going to be stored? And to how much is that person going to have to share? Sharing that kind of information then allows for that kind of informed consent and assent, and can also allay your concerns about, hey, what if participants don't sign up? And that is often a very real concern. Now, let's say you have all of this set up, right? You have all your ducks in a row. One thing that I've often noticed folks sometimes drop is they collect all of this data and they stop tracking it. As a pilot is going, if it's an efficacy study, you shouldn't touch your product at all. Just don't touch your product till the pilot is done, else our results are going to be a little, murky, I guess. If you're running a usability and feasibility study, pilot test even your pilot with just one or two teachers and track responses closely. Are there those small one or two things that quick tweaks could help for a more seamless experience? You may or may not want to change the product during the duration of the pilot, especially if it's a usability or feasibility study. Since it's fairly short and that's the whole goal, it will help you kind of start thinking ahead to maybe it raises additional questions, or maybe you need to rethink your budget or timelines for the release. In other cases, you might see that your pilot's going exceedingly well and want to consider the idea of a timed purchase or start conversations with that district and engaging them more effectively for that kind of conversion to happen.